Canaveral. The air was electric with anticipation as scientists, engineers, and spectators gathered both on-site and through screens across the globe, awaiting the launch of the SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket. Each launch held a promise of adventure and discovery, but this one carried 21 Starlink satellites, furthering humanity's quest to weave a network of connectivity across the cosmos. At the heart of this mission was the Falcon 9, standing tall and imposing against the dark Florida sky. To many, it was a marvel of engineering, a testament to human ingenuity. The rocket, a blend of strength and grace, was designed to be reusable, bringing the dream of sustainable space exploration closer to reality. Each flight marked a step, a technological leap toward the stars. Elon Musk, the visionary behind SpaceX, watched from a control room filled with the hum of machinery and murmurs of engineers. The success of each launch was critical not just for the company, but for the future of space exploration, a legacy to be passed down through generations. With the countdown clock ticking, he sat pensively, a blend of excitement and cautious optimism in his eyes. As the countdown approached zero, an expectant silence swept across Cape Canaveral. Then, with a sudden burst of light and power, the Falcon 9 ignited. The ground shook with the raw power of 9 Merlin engines, their roar a symphony echoing human ambition. The rocket surged upward, piercing the thick night as a collective cheer erupted from the spectators. On board, the 21 Starlink satellites were nestled calmly. Their journey only just beginning. Once deployed, they would find their places in low Earth orbit, joining thousands of others in creating a new digital highway in the sky. This mission was a vital part of SpaceX's grand vision, a network intended to provide high-speed internet access. Back on Earth, mission control was a whirlwind of activity. Engineers monitored every aspect of the flight, where tiny adjustments made could spell the difference between success and failure. The Falcon 9 climbed higher, stages separating seamlessly as planned. A ballet of precision engineering and impeccable timing. As the first stage completed its portion of the journey, another moment of tension descended upon the team. The booster had to return to Earth, its descent orchestrated to land on a drone ship stationed in the Atlantic Ocean. This part of the mission showcased the marvel of SpaceX's reusability technology, a feat that many still marveled at. Minutes later, cheers and applause erupted again, as the first stage touched down flawlessly, a giant step for mankind in reducing the costs of space travel. Meanwhile, the second stage continued its journey into space, nearing the point where it would release its precious cargo into orbit. As the mission clock continued to progress, the moment came when the satellites were deployed. Like seeds drifting into the cosmic winds, the Starlinks drifted gently out of the second stage. Each was now tasked with finding its orbit, a journey that would allow them to connect the world below in ways previously unimaginable. From the control room to the sites around the globe, there was a shared sense of achievement and pride. The success of the mission was a reminder of what could be accomplished when creativity, vision, and technology converged. As the Falcon 9 began its descent back to Earth, another chapter in the burgeoning story of space exploration was written, a story that was far from over. While morning light slowly brightened the horizon back on Earth, the Falcon 9's return symbolized not just the success of another mission. It also symbolized the unyielding human spirit destined to explore the unknown. And as the Starlink satellites embarked on their mission, somewhere above, a new phase of connectivity began, one satellite beam at a time.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our live coverage of the latest mission from Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. I'm Will Robinson-Smith, reporter for Spaceflight Now. We're broadcasting, as we always do, from the Spaceflight Now News Bureau here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. For those of you who are joining us once again today following the scrub of the SpaceX Crew 10 mission to the International Space Station. Welcome back. If this is your first launch broadcast with us today, welcome in. Not to skate past the big news of the day, of course, today was set to be the launch of 3 astronauts and a cosmonaut to the International Space Station. However, a hydraulics issue that was connected to the clamp arms that hold the Falcon 9 rocket over at Launch Complex 39A prevented the liftoff of this Falcon 9 rocket. So it's still there at the pad. NASA and SpaceX teams are assessing the next possible opportunity to launch this vehicle. The literal next opportunity would be tomorrow, that is Thursday, March 13th at 7:26 p.m. Eastern, 23:26 UTC. However, they are still working to resolve that ground systems issue and get to a flight rationale to move forward with it. And of course, if there are any other extenuating circumstances that might be brought into the picture, they will look at those as well. Of course, they'll also need to take a look at the launch weather in the future updates. So lots to consider when preparing for the next flight of this mission. We'll, of course, keep you updated as we learn more about Crew 10 and its next launch attempt. For now, back here at Space Launch Complex 40, the launch of 21 Starlink satellites to low Earth orbit. Preparing to move forward once again after a series of previous launch attempts that have been stymied by one thing or another. Currently T-minus 56 minutes, 50 seconds, and counting to the planned launch of this Falcon 9 rocket tonight. As long as SpaceX has not begun fueling, they do have a number of launch attempts within this window, which lasts until 2:20 a.m. Eastern on Thursday, March 13th. Into that window, again for our friends around the world, 0620 UTC. As you're settling into our launch live stream, you can do us a big favor just by clicking the like button, sharing the stream. Appreciate the 1,900 of you who are with us, and like to see some more folks be able to find their way into this live launch coverage as we cruise on through the countdown. Also want to welcome back in our moderators in the live chat. Clisty Lee, Rick Donner helping us out with this second stream after they and our other moderators were quite busy throughout the afternoon into the evening with the launch attempt of Crew 10. You can do them a favor just by abiding by the rules of the chat. First off, be courteous to others. Secondly, in no particular order, ask that you refrain from using all caps. Also, please converse in English so that our moderators can understand what's happening in the chat and respond appropriately. And last but not least, there are plenty of other places for conversation about politics. This is not one of those forums, so we respectfully ask that you leave your comments on all things political to another space. With all that out of the way, we're T-minus 54 minutes, 50 seconds and counting to the liftoff of this Falcon 9 rocket. Got our launch photographers still with us this evening. All right, Adam Bernstein is here with us at the press site, getting ready to take some still photos of the rocket and track the vehicle as well, if they are able to get to the point of launch. And Michael Kane also getting ready to do some still photography as well. If you're not following the fellows on X, you can find their handles as you see them here. Adam is at aburn_NYC, Michael Kane at MD Kane Jr. And if you're not following Spaceflight Now, you can follow us simply at Spaceflight Now. We are also on Threads, Facebook, and blue sky. We're also joined in tracking assistance this evening by our friends P. Carsons with Max Q Productions and Chuck and Jen Briggs with C&J Images. For those here in Central Florida who had a chance to step outside and check out the weather conditions today, what we're looking at tonight is basically going to be a continuation of the forecast that we talked about throughout the duration of our Crew 10 launch attempt coverage. A greater than 95% odds of good weather for today's launches on tap. That's according to the 45th Weather Squadron. So all things being equal, weather will not be an impediment to this Falcon 9 from taking flight tonight. For those of you who are not with us for our Crew 10 launch coverage or just want a refresh of what we've got on the final hour ahead of a Falcon flight, let's go ahead and step briefly through the countdown timeline, let you know the nominal milestones that we're looking forward to before the launch of this vehicle. Fueling process begins at T-minus 38 minutes when the SpaceX launch director makes the call on the start of prop load. Once the go-ahead is given, fueling starts at T-minus 35 minutes. At that point, they begin loading a rocket-grade kerosene RP-1 on board the Falcon 9's first and second stages, and liquid oxygen begins flowing on board the Falcon 9's first stage. T-minus 30 minutes, first stage helium load begins. SpaceX uses a cryogenic helium in order to pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. They'll load that on the second stage about T-minus 26 minutes. T-minus 23 minutes is when the second stage RP-1 tank is fully loaded. 20 minutes 50 seconds before flight is when the strong back chill down process gets underway. We see this as SpaceX conditions the feed lines prior to second stage LOX load around T-minus 20 minutes and 20 seconds here at pad 40. We'll see the start of the so-called big vent. It's a good visual indication that fueling is moving along as expected and on time. The vent wraps up at around T-minus 16 minutes and 30 seconds, setting the stage for second stage LOX load to begin. Then at the T-minus 7 minute point in the countdown, the chill down of the 9 Merlin engines gets underway. That process involves flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps, which helps protect the engines from the risk of thermal shock and damage during the startup sequence. About 6 minutes before flight, the first stage kerosene tank should be full. Then at T-minus 4.5 minutes, the strong back retract sequence begins. It'll start with the clamp arms opening up just beneath the payload fairings, and then the strong back, or the transporter erector, reclines a few degrees away from the Falcon 9 rocket and stays in that position until liftoff. And at that point, it'll pull back in a much more rapid fashion to clear the way for the vertical climb of the Falcon 9. 3 minutes out, the first stage liquid oxygen tank is full. Same is true on the second stage, about a minute afterwards, at which point Falcon 9 is fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. In the final 60 seconds, as you hear the call that the Falcon 9 is in startup, control of the countdown is handed over from the ground sequencer to the Falcon 9's onboard flight computers, and the propellant tanks are brought up to flight pressure. SpaceX launch director will give their go for launch T-minus 45 seconds out. The engine ignition command is issued at T-minus 3 seconds, and if all 9 Merlin engines are healthy and ignite, the command will be given for the hold down clamps to release the Falcon 9 rocket for a T0 liftoff, currently set for 10:35 p.m. Eastern, 02:35 UTC. In other words, in T-minus 49 minutes and counting. Time now T-minus 47 minutes, 31 seconds and counting. With the flight of this mission, the top 5 most flown boosters will see a little bit of movement here. Not as far as the order of the slots, but as far as the number of flights that these top 5 most flown boosters have conducted. Taking a moment to talk about Falcon 9 frequent flyers at the top of the list. Unsurprising to those who closely follow the Falcon program, that is B-1067, which has been to space and back a total of 26 times. This SpaceX is working to certify its first stage boosters for up to 40 flights apiece. Coming in tied to the number 2 spot, you have B-1063 and B-1071 with 23 launches apiece. The movement that I teased a moment ago, that's coming in the 4th spot, where B-1069, set to launch tonight, will move firmly into the 4th spot with its 22nd launch and planned landing, and that will leave B-1076 in the 5th spot. Currently, those boosters are tied for 4th. Here's where SpaceX stands on its Falcon family of launches so far this year. 27 missions in the books, looking for number 28 tonight, if they are in fact able to launch the Starlink 12-21 mission, coming up here in a little less than 46 minutes. Now T-minus 40 minutes, 52 seconds and counting. A little less than 3 minutes away from the point at which the SpaceX launch director is set to make the call on the start of prop load today. SpaceX takes this poll electronically, so if it feels like it's in a good posture, they can do this a little bit early. But generally speaking, the 38-minute mark is when it happens. As we're awaiting the go-ahead for the start of fueling and the actual fueling process itself to begin, let's go ahead and talk about where this Falcon 9 rocket is going to fly once it does leave the pad. Let's talk a little trajectory, shall we? As is the case with all the missions that are part of the Starlink Group 12, this rocket's going to be flying in a southeasterly trajectory once it leaves the pad, Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station. The rocket will follow the green arc that you see there on your screen, with the first stage booster, B-1069, following the red path. It's planning to touch down safely on the drone ship called a Shortfall of Gravitas. If successful with this booster landing tonight, it would mark the 101st booster landing on this particular drone ship, and the 416th successful landing for SpaceX to date. As we mentioned, this will be the 22nd time this booster flies to space and back, as SpaceX works to certify its first stage boosters for up to 40 flights apiece. Same is true with its payload fairings, also working to certify them for 40 flights each. They will splash down in the waters of the Atlantic Ocean under the support of steerable parachutes. SpaceX saves about $6 million per fairing recovery effort, so it's an important part of their business model to scoop these up as often as possible. They'd be brought back in through Port Canaveral over to the Hangar X site, where SpaceX will examine, refurbish, and plan to turn them around for future flights. Now T minus 35 minutes and counting. At this point, if the SpaceX launch director has in fact given the go ahead for the start of fueling, tanking of the Falcon 9 rocket that is, has now begun. As we take a closer look at the Falcon 9 rocket, what we're watching for are signs that liquid oxygen is flowing on board the tanks of the Falcon 9's first stage. The sign for that will be a frost ring that forms near the base of the first stage booster. Where you want to look for this is if you see near the bottom of your screen where the Falcon 9 booster goes from somewhat of a charcoal gray gradient to kind of a light gray. Just past that point of transition is the X in SpaceX. And just beneath the X in SpaceX, that's where the bottom of the liquid oxygen tank will be, and where we will see the evidence of liquid oxygen flowing on board. Given the difference in temperature between the supercold densified liquid oxygen and the far warmer and more humid Florida air, we'll also start to see some vapor form in that area once fueling has actually begun. As we were watching for signs of fueling, once again, do want to give a big shout to our moderators in the live chat, Rick Donner, Clisty Lee, Astro Joe, for helping us out with double the live streams today. We've already been live more than 5 hours running, so appreciate you helping out with all that. And as you can see, we are starting to see that vapor ring form around the skin of the rocket there on the Falcon 9's first stage. That means liquid oxygen is flowing and SpaceX is locking into that T0 time of 10:35 p.m. Eastern, 02:35 UTC. now T-minus 30 minutes and counting. At this point in the countdown, SpaceX is loading a cryogenic helium into the pressure vessels on the Falcon 9's first stage to help pressurize the main propellant tanks during flight. With 30 minutes remaining in the countdown tonight, I want to thank the now more than 5,000 of you who are watching with us live. If you haven't already, we'd sure appreciate it if you could click that like button, share the stream, allow some more folks to find their way into this live launch coverage. Also want to thank a number of folks for their support this evening. Our thanks to Psychonaut69 for upgrading their membership to Spacecraft Commander. Really appreciate that increased level of support, Psychonaut. And thanks to our top level members who help keep our pricing as it is for entry level membership. Thanks as well to channel member Chuck Close, the very generous $25 super chat. Appreciate that, Chuck. Good to see you this evening. Thanks as well to Carol DeFazio with the $2 super chat, and to Lisa Lynch with a $5 super chat. Appreciate that from the two of you. Channel member and moderator Astro Joe with the gifted membership. Thanks again for helping to grow our community here, Astro Joe. To our newest channel member, welcome aboard. We're glad to have you with us. And if you haven't already, be sure to thank Astro Joe in the live chat. We hope you decide to stick around with channel membership. One more thank you to Psychonaut69 for a $2 super chat saying, "Hey, Will." Hey, Psychonaut. And thanks as well to Distributor69 for a $10 super chat. With about 27.5 minutes to go before liftoff of this Falcon 9 rocket, let's go ahead and take a moment to talk about the payload that's on board this vehicle. 21 Starlink satellites in total, 13 of which feature direct-to-cell capabilities. This flight set to be SpaceX's 20th Starlink launch of the year so far, and 19th dedicated Starlink launch with no other payload on board. Last year, SpaceX noted that they introduced a new type of Starlink V2 Mini satellite called the optimized V2 Mini. Notably lighter than its predecessor, these weigh about 1,267 pounds or about 575 kilograms, though SpaceX does not note if they are still flying the original V2 Minis, and if and when they are flying the optimized versions, how many are on each Falcon flight. They've made a hard cutover to these new versions of the Starlinks entirely. With their solar panels unfurled, they have a wingspan of about 100 feet or 30 meters. They use argon Hall effect thrusters for in-orbit maneuvering. They were built in Redmond, Washington, which is near Seattle. And these satellites flying today will be deployed at 180 miles or 291 kilometers in altitude at a 43 degrees inclination. Thanks to a couple of different sources, we've got a number of different vantage points looking at the Starlink V2 Mini. This first one comes from the progress report that SpaceX published at the end of 2024 with a artist's rendering and interpretation of the laser mesh that links the Starlink satellites. Then around the time of the Super Bowl, as SpaceX was promoting its partnership with the direct-to-cell capable Starlink satellites, sharing this rendering of a V2 mini Starlink satellite in its on-orbit configuration as part of that promotional advertising. And finally, a real Starlink V2 mini actually on orbit as captured by a spacecraft from Black Sky and HEO. And last little item here, an image of a Argon Hall thruster in testing. Now T-minus 22 minutes, 16 seconds and counting. We're just a couple of minutes away from the start of the strong back chill down sequence when SpaceX conditions the feed lines ahead of loading liquid oxygen on board the Falcon 9's second stage. As we're awaiting that milestone, I want to thank a few more folks for their support this evening. But thanks to channel member Ryan Snyder, who's been with us as a channel member for 6 months now at the pad leader level, who says, thank you, Will and Mods, and the whole Spaceflight Now family. Many more months to come. Appreciate your ongoing support. Also want to thank channel member Rocket Lady Elizabeth for gifting a Spaceflight Now membership. Really appreciate that, Elizabeth. And to our newest channel member, welcome aboard. Glad to have you with us. Sure to thank Rocket Lady Elizabeth in the live chat. And we hope you decide to stick around with channel membership. Thanks as well to AJ for a $2 super chat saying watching at KSC for my birthday. Shout out Dr. John. Now T-minus 20 minutes, 48 seconds and counting. We are just about 20 seconds or so away from the start of the big vent here at the pad. Assuming all is continuing to move on as expected with the fueling process. And there you see the start of the big vent. Now T minus 16 minutes, 26 seconds. You can see the big event has wrapped up. Second stage liquid oxygen load about to begin in roughly 20 seconds. Now T minus 15 minutes and counting. As we mentioned earlier in the broadcast, the Falcon 9 first stage booster set to launch today is tail number 1069 in the SpaceX fleet, going for flight number 22. But before it goes ahead and notches that milestone, let's take a moment to step back and talk about where this booster has been in its previous 21 flights. It began launching with the flight of SpaceX's 24th Commercial Resupply Services, or CRS, mission to the International Space Station, which lifted off on December 21st of 2021. That was followed up by a batch of 54 Starlink version 1.5 satellites, lifting off on the Group 4-23 flight, August 28th, 2022. Up next was a mission for Eutelsat, its Hotbird 13F communications satellite, on October 15th, and then a batch of OneWeb satellites for Eutelsat OneWeb constellation on December 8th. Back for another Starlink flight, 5-3 on February 2nd of 2023. And then a pair of communication satellite for one of SpaceX's oldest customers, SES, with their 18 and 19 satellites. And then from here on out, it is all Starlinks all the time up to the present day. So buckle up. We've got 5-6 on May 4th, 5-12 on June 23rd, 6-9 on August 11th, 6-19 on September 30th, 6-29 on November 18th, 6-36 on December 29th, coming into last year, 6-39 on February 25th, 6-47 on April 5th, 6-57 on May 6th, 10-1 on June 8th, 10-9 on July 27th, 8-10 on August 31st, 10-8 on October 26th, 6-66 on November 21st, and bringing it up to the present, we had Starlink 12-3 on February 4th of this year. And in 12 minutes and 23 seconds, we hope to add one more to that number when SpaceX launches the Starlink 12-21 mission. as we await the launch of SpaceX's 28th Falcon 9 rocket launch of the year, let's go ahead and talk about the workhorse vehicle for the company, the Falcon 9. It stands at 70 meters or 229 feet tall with a diameter of 3.66 meters or 12 feet. The majority of that is made up by the Falcon 9 first stage booster. This one, 1069, once again has flown 21 times before, looking for launch number 22 today. At the base of the first stage are 9 Merlin engines which burn a rocket-grade kerosene and liquid oxygen, producing 1.7 million pounds of thrust at liftoff. Around the engine compartment are black carbon fiber landing legs that are used to land the first stage on the drone ship. Tonight they're using the drone ship called a Shortfall of Gravitas. Above the first stage is the inner stage. This is a composite structure which consists of an aluminum honeycomb core which is surrounded by carbon fiber. On the image on the right-hand side of your screen, you can see the deployable hypersonic grid fins. These are titanium winglets that provide stability and steering for the Falcon 9 as it comes back through the atmosphere, tail first like a big old dart heading towards the drone ship. At the top of the inner stage are 3 mechanical latches that attach to the vehicle's second stage, and at first stage main engine cutoff. High-pressure helium is used to release those latches, and 4 pneumatic pushers ensure a clean separation. The second stage engine nozzle is also housed safely inside the inner stage adapter until stage separation. Second stage of the Falcon 9 rocket, powered by a single modified Merlin engine called a Merlin vacuum engine, or an MVAC engine. It's equipped with a large nozzle which is optimized for burns in the vacuum of space, hence the name. It produces more than 220,500 pounds of thrust, and it will be fired twice on today's flight, placing the 21 Starlink satellites into their intended orbit. As with the first stage, the second stage of the Falcon 9 burns the same propellant mix, liquid oxygen, RP-1. Following the deployment of the 21 Starlink satellites, the upper stage is designed to perform one final burn to deorbit the upper stage, driving it back into the atmosphere, where it's designed to burn up and help eliminate the risk of creating any unnecessary space debris on this mission. Finally, at the top of the Falcon 9 stack are the payload fairings, which are currently encapsulating the 21 Starlink satellites. The fairings are made up of a carbon composite material and stand 13.1 meters or 43 feet tall and are 5.2 meters or 17.1 feet in diameter. The 2 fairing halves will be recovered a little further downrange from where the first stage lands on the drone ship, and they gently splash down into the waters of the Atlantic Ocean under the support of steerable parachutes. Now T-minus 7 minutes and counting. At this point, SpaceX is flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and turbo pumps on the first stage engines. That'll help protect them from the risk of thermal shock and damage during that startup sequence. Taking a quick peek at our live chat here. First off, I want to thank the 15,000 plus of you who are with us live tonight. If you haven't already, you could do us a big favor just by clicking the like button, share the stream, allow some more folks to find their way into this live launch coverage as we prepare to hopefully see Falcon 9 launch in a little more than 6 minutes. I also want to thank Shay Calandry with a $5 super chat, saying the law of averages must catch up with SpaceX soon, right? Rooting for a launch. The company did manage to launch about a dozen times last month, so they're still making progress through their goals of the year, but as they're aiming for 170 missions by the end of 2025. certain they're hoping they can pick up their launch cadence a little bit. Now T-minus 5 minutes, 33 seconds and counting. Just about 30 seconds or so ago, the first stage kerosene tank should have finished topping off. We're a little less than a minute away from the strong back retract sequence. Of course, for those who were with us for the launch attempt of the Crew 10 mission, the clamp arms were the sticking point that prevented the launch of that flight. The hydraulic system had an issue with it that at this point SpaceX and NASA haven't gone into great detail on, as they're working through resolving that, but hopefully we should be getting an update in the hours to come tonight. Hopefully sooner than hours, but we'll see.
Tanks are pressing for the start, or for strong retract.
And as you just heard, we are getting mission audio from SpaceX.
Strong back retract has started.
And we do actually have an update for you on the Crew 10 mission. Teams are now targeting no earlier than Friday, March 14th for the planned launch of that 4-member crew to the International Space Station. This update coming within the last few seconds here. Liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket from Pad 39A set for, again, Friday, March 14th at 7:03 p.m. Eastern. That's 23:03 UTC. According to this update from NASA, and I'll quote them here, quote, mission managers met this evening and decided to wave off a launch attempt on Thursday, March 13th due to high winds and precipitation forecasted in the flight path of Dragon. Continuing on with their statement, launch teams are also working to address a hydraulic system issue with a ground support clamp arm for the Falcon 9 rocket at Launch Complex 39A at NASA's Kennedy Space Center. So no further details on the driving impact of that hydraulic issue. But we know officially there will be no launch attempt on Thursday. Now less than 3 minutes to go on this Falcon 9 rocket launch from Pad 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station.
Stage 1 LOX load is complete.
Good call on Stage 1 LOX load. We're waiting for a similar call on Stage 2 here in the next 30 seconds or so. A little bit of housekeeping here. You'll note the clock in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. Quite a bit different than what you're seeing from the SpaceX feed. Feed from SpaceX is coming in on a notable delay today. Our feed is in real time.
Stage 2 LOX load is complete.
So you're seeing now in real time the ground gas closeouts in the box on the right-hand side of your screen. As long as we still have ground level views of the Falcon 9 rocket with our tracking cameras, we'll be making our callouts based on real time. And pivot to the SpaceX timeline of things once we no longer are able to track the rocket's progress from the ground.
Ground gas closeouts.
Now T-minus 1 minute to flight. again with the time discrepancy. Right about now is when the SpaceX launch director in real time is making the call that
Falcon 9 is in startup.
they would be go for launch. We'll hear that call coming in about 10 seconds. 30 seconds.
Launch director, go for launch.
And with that call, "15 seconds. And here we go. In 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Engine ignition and liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket on Starlink 12-21. Falcon 9 has cleared the tower. And we're a little more than a minute into flight as the Falcon 9 rocket is passing through max Q, point of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. We're coming up on a few events in fairly rapid succession here. First, we'll see first stage main engine cutoff, the conclusion of the first burn of the Falcon 9 booster. That'll be followed a few seconds after by stage separation, about 2.5 minutes into flight. Then the ignition of the Merlin vacuum engine at about T plus 2 minutes and 38 seconds. The payload fairings at the top of the Falcon 9 stack will be deployed about 3 minutes into flight. Great work by the tracking team today. Now 2 minutes into the mission. We're coming up on MECO in about 10 seconds. And MECO. Stage separation. And second stage engine start. See those same views from the SpaceX onboard cameras momentarily.
Main engine cut off.
Stage separation confirmed.
MVAC ignition.
Should see payload fairing separation. There go the fairings in the big box. You can see the deployment of the hypersonic grid fins there from the SpaceX onboard cameras.
Fairing separation confirmed.
And a good view of the Starlink satellites, 21 in total, 13 of which feature the direct-to-cell capability. A little more than 3.5 minutes into this mission so far. Next milestone coming up is the start of the first stage entry burn. That's coming up at about T plus 6 minutes and 20 seconds to flight. The Falcon 9 first stage booster has passed its apogee, cresting at about 123 kilometers in altitude today. A little bit higher than we've seen some other Falcon 9 first stage boosters reach in similar Starlink flights. Now about T plus 5 minutes, 29 seconds into this mission. We are less than a minute away from the start of the first stage entry burn beginning. That's when SpaceX will relight 3 of the engines on the Falcon 9 first stage booster and begin to slow the vehicle down quite dramatically. The entry burn today will last roughly 22 seconds in total. Entry burn should be starting right now. And our photographer friend, Pete Carstens, has it. Well done, Pete. Max Q Productions.
Stage 1 FTS is saved.
And that entry burn is now wrapped up in real time. Unfortunately, the landing burn is a little too close to the horizon to be able to see it with our tracking cameras, so we'll be relying on the SpaceX onboard cameras for that event.
Stage 1 entry burn.
Now a little more than 7.5 minutes into flight in real time. About 7 minutes, 19 seconds from the SpaceX feed. The next milestone coming up will be the start of the landing burn, which will begin just past the 8-minute mark. One of the engines, the center engine, will relight, setting up the booster to target a soft touchdown.
Stage 1 transonic.
On the drone ship, Shortfall of Gravitas.
Stage 2 is in terminal guidance.
Stage 1 landing burn. Landing leg deploy. Stage 1 landing confirmed.
And for a 20-second time, B-1069 appears to have landed safely.
And vac shutdown.
That touchdown was the first East Coast-based drone ship landing.
Nominal orbit insertion.
Good call from SpaceX on nominal orbit for the second stage. That was the first touchdown since an engine or a fuel leak caused the ultimate demise of B-1086 following its touchdown on the drone ship. Just read the instructions back on March 2nd. So hopefully all will continue well with the journey back to Port Canaveral with booster 1069. As SpaceX proceeded towards the planned launch of the Crew 10 mission, they noted in a blog update that while they felt like they had enough confidence to step through to the process of launching the Crew 10 mission from a launch vehicle perspective. They had not entirely closed out the investigation into the booster leak. And with a good liftoff and landing of the first stage booster, we're going to begin to wind down our coverage. But first, want to thank a few folks for their support before we conclude with our look at the mission stats as they currently stand. Thanks to Jim Patrick, channel member with a $5 super chat. Thank you, Jim. Channel member Nelson Reyes gifting 5 Spacefly Now memberships. Thanks, Nelson, for growing our community like that. Janine Delasera joining us with a $2 super chat, who says, "Hello, sorry I haven't been around. I'm back." Glad to have you back, Janine. And we've got some new channel members, Juan Zambrano and Janine as well, and Nacho Bro Ryan, all joining with channel membership at the pad leader level. Welcome aboard to all of you. We're glad to have you with us. Thanks as well to Larry Mask, channel member with a $10 super chat. Thank you for your support, Larry. The astronomers saying, if you love a clean, family-friendly chat, please show the mods and crew some love. Thank you for the kind words. Charles Baxter with a $10 super chat saying, thank you, Spaceflight Now. Thank you, Charles, for your support. And Calista Lee with a $10 super chat, one of our fabulous moderators, working hard today, chipping in another donation to my Tea and Halls Fund. Says you're going to need it this weekend. Boy, howdy, can I already feel it. All right, so let's go ahead and wrap this up so I can make my way to that aforementioned Tea and Halls. With a good liftoff and landing, this was the 22nd flight of Falcon 9 booster 1069. That marked the 445th Falcon 9 launch to date. This was the 28th Falcon 9 flight of 2025, the 387th Falcon booster reflight, with the launch of a booster that has flown at least once. No Falcon Heavies on the launch schedule yet, so this was the 28th orbital launch for SpaceX of the year so far. Bit of a typo there. For some reason our software didn't update, but this is actually the 138th orbital launch within the last 365 days. This was the 238th orbital launch for SpaceX from Pad 40, and the 292nd overall orbital launch from this pad as well. Taking a look at the bar chart, here's where the Falcon family of rockets stands at this point in time. Moving on to some recovery stats. This was the 101st landing of a booster successfully on the drone ship, a Shortfall of Gravitas. That marked the 333rd SpaceX drone ship landing and the 416th overall SpaceX booster landing as well. Finally, this was the 21st orbital flight from the Sunshine State of Florida. Marked the 29th orbital launch from U.S. soil this year, the 31st from a U.S. rocket company, and the 48th orbital launch attempt around the globe. After some further digging, it appears as though the reports of the failed launch from China were not substantiated, so we've revised this stat back to 0 orbital launch failures on the year. Here's where our pie chart currently stands. As far as U.S. launch providers looking to add to that total of 31, got a couple of launches right around the corner in addition to the upcoming launch of Crew 10 on now Friday at the earliest. We've got Rocket Lab looking to launch twice in a matter of days on the 15th and the 18th for a pair of its customers. And Firefly Aerospace, in the midst of their Blue Ghost lunar lander mission, is now looking to launch its 6th Alpha rocket from Vandenberg Space Force Base with the LM-400 satellite bus for Lockheed Martin. Looking to launch that no earlier than the 15th. And with that, my friends, it has been quite the marathon day, and the team here has put in an exhaustive amount of work, so we're going to go ahead and stay adieu for now. I want to thank all the folks who've been supporting us with this live coverage in this latest stream. I want to thank our moderators, Clisty Lee, Rick Donner, Astro Joe. Appreciate you for helping us out tonight. Thanks to our channel member community. As you see, the transport erector is now back in the vertical position there at pad 40, preparing for future launches in the not too distant future. Our thanks as well to our photographer team of Michael Kane and Adam Bernstein. If you're not following the guys, you can find them once again here on X. Michael is at MD Kane Jr. and Adam Bernstein at Aburn NYC. Our thanks as well to our Spaceflight Now editor, Stephen Young. Thanks to friends of the channel, Chuck and Jen Briggs with C&J Images, and Pete Carstens with Max Key Productions for providing tracking views of this Falcon 9 as it made its ascent. Most importantly, thanks to you for wherever you've been watching from. We'll be back with you with more launch coverage when Crew 10 next takes flight or another mission comes up in the interim. For all of us here at Spaceflight Now, I'm Will Robinson Smith. One last time today, be good to yourselves, be good to others, and we will see you next time, folks. And until then, bye-bye.